What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another video. First things first, power stash activated. You gotta like the video simply for the mustache. Second, the reason why we're here today. We are here because I'm tackling my biggest project yet, which is making an entryway nook. This thing's gonna be 7 feet tall, 55 inches wide, and about 18 inches deep. This is definitely the biggest in-home piece of furniture I've ever made. So I'm excited, I'm nervous, but I think it's gonna be a good challenge. And the first thing we gotta do is create some framing for this bad boy. So that's what we'll do. Alright, so you can see right here, we have the bottom brace all mocked up. The next step is gonna be taking all those braces right there and ripping them down by 3/4 of an inch thick. And the reason why I'm gonna do that is because the floorboard that I'm gonna use for this is gonna be 3/4 of an inch thick. And I want that floorboard to be flush with the front and back braces. So by ripping off that 3/4 inch, once I lay that piece in there, it'll be nice and flat. So let's get to it. We have everything jigged in place. The next thing we are gonna do is make 4 36-inch beams, essentially, that are gonna go from here up, there up, there up. We're gonna have to repeat that same thing on this side. So all in all, it's going to be 8 pieces of 36-inch wood for these sections. So let's do that. Our 8 posts all cut. Now before I assemble the posts actually onto the frame, I'm actually going to build each of the cubbies separately and then attach them to the base. I think that'll make that process a lot easier, and then it'll make building the middle section a lot easier as well. Alright, so we have all of the framing done for the outer cubbies. So now what we need to do is actually make these outer cubbies come to life. So we need to cut a total of 8 braces and secure these together. So we'll have our 2 outer cubbies all set and done. So I'm going to cut those pieces right now. So there you have it. Cubby 1 is done. I'm liking how this is looking. So obviously, I messed up on this one. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I should have put pocket holes that are gonna go into the base in, which I thought I did on all of them. But if you come over here, I actually only did it on 1 out of the 4. So that'll be fun. Anyways, that'll just make jigging the hole a little more difficult, but it's nothing that can't be fixed. Either way, that is 1 of 2 cubbies done, and then we'll get it mounted on that there base. Here we are, next day, finished up the second cubby. We got everything spaced out as is. The next thing we have to do is make the middle section framing, but we're also gonna look to make some legs here, and we're gonna do that with just some regular 2x4 cut at 3 inches. All right, so we have our legs cut, secured. I put in some putty to fill those holes earlier because obviously these edge pieces will still be exposed. So now that putty's all dried up, the next thing I'm going to do is sand that down, then start assembling all this together. All right, so we got all the putty sanded down. We got all of this assembled. And as you can see, I went ahead and pocket holed this. Now, when I did pocket hold that, I actually took apart both cubbies simply because A, it made it jigging those areas a lot easier, and then B, I didn't like the way the height looked in terms of how this was. I think it was sitting at like 42 inches tall, and like I said, I sketched it out originally for 36, so I made a boo-boo, so I fixed my boo-boo. But we are now all assembled, nice and sturdy. So the next part I'm gonna do is create this center section right here, and I'm gonna do that with 26-inch pieces, some extra beams, so that we'll have 2 more cubbies on the bottom. So we'll do that. All right, so we got our two pieces cut at 26¼ inch for that center brace. Now we're gonna need to cut two more 14½ pieces, which is what those braces are for right there. And then we're gonna have to take the measurement for these bottom pieces and cut those. Just like that, all the framing for the lower section of this nook is done. The next step will be sanding it and staining it, but I'm gonna save that for tomorrow. So that'll be a while for me. It'll be a few seconds for you. See you then. All right, it is the next day. We have everything sanded, everything stained in a nice mahogany. Now, I went and bought all the material I'm gonna need for all the shelving. So we're gonna get that all cut up and put in place. So, nothing to it but to do it. We got our boards cut to length perfectly. Now, the next step that we're gonna do is we're gonna actually sand the bottoms and we're gonna stain the bottoms before I install them because I don't wanna flip this thing all around and it's gonna get super heavy pretty quick. So rather get the staining out of the way, so I'm gonna just hit that real quick. All right, so we got the boards in there nice and secured, and then we also stained the shelf as well. So our next step is gonna be having to measure out the second shelf length, which is obviously gonna be the same as the bottom shelf, and getting the width right, and we're gonna be ripping down some boards to the correct width so we can keep the same look going throughout. But that's the next step. You'll see it in the in-between and the done. All right, awkward leaving now. Now cut to width, length, cut to length. And now, before I adjust the width at all, I'm first gonna figure out the measurements for all these posts in relation to these boards. That way, I can take my jigsaw and cut out all those different holes. Then I'm gonna lay the boards in there and see how they're laying with each other. And then depending on that is then when I will adjust the width of these boards. So, I'm gonna do that. Got everything mocked up now. The next step is gonna be the same as the first shelf. We're gonna sand the bottoms, stain the bottoms, and then secure everything down. All right, so we got that shelf in there nice and secured, nice and stained. However, it was at the cost of most of the stain. I accidentally let the container slip or it fell over. Honestly, don't even know what happened, but it happened. So I have to hurry up and clean this up, and then I'll figure out what I'm gonna do next. So everything's cleaned up now, thankfully. I started cutting what's gonna be the outside shell for both sides of the nook, and then I also created the inside panels that are gonna go as the inner cubby, so the two in between walls, walls 2 and 3. These are gonna be the inner panels. They'll just rest in there with the pocket holes, and we'll attach those in to each of those beams. The way I did these, I ripped these to even width, and then I simply just put in my pocket holes, and now we have nice sturdy panels. So I have to sand these, I'm gonna stain these, and then I'm gonna put them in. So quite a bit has happened. So I got the panels in, no big deal. Those, again, as you can see, just pocket hold those in on the 3 different sides. I then put in the siding. These I cut to 36 inches, ripped them down to 6 inches wide, so got them secured on both sides. But then I sent like a quick update picture to the client, and the client, excuse me, actually wanted to darken this up a bit. So I hit it with some ebony stain that I had. So the color of this going forward will now be ebony, but the ebony definitely is popping on here. Look at that, all around, bang. Looks good. I hit all the areas that are gonna be visible, obviously, because I wanna save as much stain as I can, because I still have to do the backing and the shelving. So any area that's just gonna be covered, whether it's with the new countertop or the cubby that's gonna be going on, I didn't really bother, but all visible areas are now hit with ebony, and I'm loving how it's looking. All right, guys, it is the next day. The next step for this project is gonna be creating the backing of the nook. We're gonna be using a bunch of 1x4s to do that. So I'm gonna start cutting these to length. We now have our width for our backing done. So now it's gonna be time to trim this to length. So now that the backing is completely stained and on the sides, what we're gonna do is measure and cut a few braces on the back piece here to keep this all together. And then, let me put this down. And then once that's done, we'll be able to flip it and put on, stain the front, and then put a brace on the front as well to make this a secure wall. All right, let's do that. Stapled on the back, I flipped the piece, and now it's time to stain the front. There is the front of it all done. We got this clamped in place right now because we need to take the measurement of these last side pieces, which are going to run to the top and clamp everything or tie everything all together. So we have our measurements done for these side pieces, so we're going to get to cut. We got the side pieces ripped to the correct width, correct height. We got the clamps in there holding that in place as well. So our next step is gonna be just to secure these to the side of the backing, and then we'll tie it into the actual side of the unit. And then we'll have to do the top shelf, and then another shelf right there. And then we'll be able to get the countertops in too, and we'll be close to done. Assist from Pops. Say what up, Pops. What a loser. Just kidding. Anyways, so we got both sides. They can hear you. Anyways, we got both sides in secured to the back paneling. So the next thing we need to do, like I was saying earlier, is put a top piece to kind of connect it all from top down. And then we're gonna do a shelf right along there. Starting to rain, so we're wrapping it up from outside perspective, but we got that top shelf in. The last thing that we'll have to do is put in these countertop areas and put in some hooks along the back wall. We got our countertops cut to 14.5 inches. We have 4 pieces, 2 on each section. However, I'm gonna have to measure out and cut out this little groove here so that fits in nice and flush. All right, so we got our cover lid countertops all cut in. I stained the 3. I put some wood putty in one of the corners there because it chipped out. So I'm letting that dry before I stain that piece. But however, there is the markings for the hooks that we're gonna put in. And I'm probably gonna run another strip of 1x4 on the back so that I can tie the actual hooks into something besides the 1x4 that's up there currently. And looking at the base of this, obviously there was the mahogany I stained over that I mentioned, and there's just too much of a color contrast for my liking. So I'm actually gonna sand this down with some 80 grit and then restain it with more ebony. So I'm not gonna film that part. I rarely film sanding, as we know. And I was mistaken. So you didn't see me do any of the work. However, I sanded that last piece of countertop, stained it all, secured it. I did run that strip of 1x4 along the back of the wall, secured all the hooks into that strip. I then also temporarily secured all the sides into place so that this would be a complete unit, because I wanted to get this complete and together prior to going to the client's house when we deliver it and install it there. But yeah, this project is done. I'm very happy. This was a massive project, but yeah, I feel like it turned out pretty good. I had no plans to work off of. I got the picture from the client and just made it based off the dimensions, and I'm really happy with how this turned out. I think this looks great. And like I said, the last thing it will be is to deliver this to the client. But that is all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Any comments or suggestions, please let me know down below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your notification bells, and have a great day. God bless.